Hey, y'all. How are you doing? I am great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I am back for another video. We had a little pause. We had a little interruption, but I'm back. Hi. Yeah. All right. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but before I get into the crazy litigious couple of weeks, okay? I have to be a great aunt and plug my niece's Girl Scout cookies. My nieces are selling Girl Scout cookies. The link is in the description box below. Help us win again. And I do mean us because this is a family effort. I I've said elsewhere that I do think that me publishing their Girl Scout cookie link on social media did inspire their region to change the rules. I don't know. That's alleged. I don't know, but I'm still going to help, okay? Because they didn't say I couldn't. So if you like black girls, buy some Girl Scout cookies. If you hate black girls, don't. It's that it's that simple. It's that easy. Let's take a look at the comments. Hi. Yes. Hey, you guys. It's time. It's 3 a.m. where I live, but I am ready. Yeah. I do have the chat on slow mode. I do. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Okay. Because I am trying to deter, spam and stuff. But I also have it on subscriber only mode. Okay. So, we are here today to do a long awaited follow up to my initial video about the resignation of Claudine Gay. She was the 30th president of Harvard University. She was the first black woman, the first black ever president of Harvard. And after she and two other university presidents appeared and testified before Congress regarding university anti Semitism, she did not answer in a way that a lot of Zionists felt was appropriate. And a subsequent campaign, months-long campaign to force Harvard's hand and remove her as president. Initially, the university stood behind her. I said that they were going to stand behind her for a minute because it does look real bad to throw away the first black person president of Harvard, of course. But then these allegations of plagiarism emerged. And I mean, I've gone back and forth about the legitimacy of the concerns, and some people have said that's really common and widespread. Some people have said it's absolutely wrong, categorically false, never acceptable. What is interesting is that since Claudine Gay resigned on January 2nd, a number of other people have been found to have done the same things in their graduate work and their dissertations, including the wife of Bill Ackman. Her name is Neri Oxman. She was formerly a professor at MIT, which of course is ironic because Bill was leading the charge for using the plagiarism allegations to remove Claudine Gay. So, that's that. But before we get into it, you guys, if you've been following me elsewhere on social media, then you know I have some things to say. Let me get comfortable. Sorry. Oh, but before I really do that, before I really jump into the serious stuff, I have to. This is new merch. Love Obsessed. This is the Black Girls Deserve Love iPhone case, and they also have one for Samsung on shopknf.com. This says that this is gonna, let me plug this in. And there's a pillow. The pillow right behind me. And I know people are gonna ask me about this. This is not merch. But my My "Are y'all okay?" in the classic gray has makeup on it, so I have to send it off to be laundered, so I couldn't wear it tonight. But I'm wearing my Little Kim sweatshirt. I will link it down below after this is over. Okay. Are you ready? Whew. So, if you've been following me here on Patreon, on Instagram, on the newsletter, you know that the past couple of weeks have been really crazy. Um, so as I've outlined, for the past year, I've been experiencing what I've termed digital terrorism, which is the use of cyber stalking, cyberbullying, harassment, and doxing to achieve political aims. And the perpetrator of that digital terrorism was one of the leaders of a subsection of the manosphere. His name is Mark Robinson. And I discussed my experience with this kind of digital terrorism first in a video that was kind of about Claudine Gay, but also about how digital terrorism is going to become more and more prevalent. I believe I published that video on January 3rd. It is still available to watch, and I've linked it down below. But I followed up that initial video with a longer explanation and exploration of this phenomenon in a video published on January 13th called How Proud Pick-Me's Propel the Manosphere's Digital Terrorism. I provided in that 94-minute long video commentary and analysis of the situation, and I homed in on Black women's participation in the manosphere and the consequences of that. In typical Kimberly fashion, I even provided a citation from a scholar in media studies. Okay. So, after the first version of that was uploaded on January 13th, I re-edited the video and re-uploaded it on January 14th. Tishka Smith, Mark's partner, filed 2 copyright takedown requests that were automatically approved because of YouTube's ridiculous system. But those requests were, in my opinion, the opinion of my very experienced copyright lawyer, and every single copyright attorney I've talked to since November 2023, when Tishka issued her first cease and desist over my use of the image in my commentary, invalid. Every single expert that I've spoken to has said, this is clearly fair use. You're using the image to comment on it, and critique is clearly legally protected in the United States. So, because of all of the conversations that I've had about this situation, I've basically, over the past couple of months, become like a little copyright law apprentice, okay? I know the stare decisis, right? The precedent with regard to the use of quote unquote of copyrighted material and material that is not technically copyrighted, meaning material that is not registered with the US Copyright Office. At this point, I know it like the back of my hand. I undoubtedly transformed the nature of the image with my commentary and criticism. And I used the image to discuss events that actually happened. It seems Tishka's argument is that because she is a professional photographer, my use of the image amounts to tortious interference. In my opinion, absolutely not. The image was not created to be sold. It was not published to her Facebook page in any commercial manner. It was a selfie uploaded to Facebook so she could, in my estimation, brag about meeting Me Too founder Tarana Burke. There was no market for me to impact. But even if there were a market for the image, my 94-minute long video of cultural commentary about factual events would not serve as a market substitution. It's simply not possible. Consequently, my use of the image on YouTube on January 13th and another image Tishka published on January 14th, those are legally protected. Now, of course, technically, whether something is actually considered fair use can only be determined by courts. But I and the many attorneys I have talked to over the past week and a half feel very strongly that there is little to no chance that if this were to go to federal court, that I would lose. And maybe I have consulted so many people because I don't want to lose $100,000. Right? Like, I'll spend it, but I don't want to lose it. I do believe that both Tishka and Mark understand that my use of that image in my cultural commentary and criticism is legally protected because they have used other people's work, including images and videos, in content that they've produced. But I think both Tishka and Mark thought that I would not have the desire or the ability to fight these, in my opinion, baseless accusations. They're wrong. And despite those two automated video takedowns, when Tishka tried to implement another copyright takedown request for the video that is currently available called "What Can We Learn from the Career Assassination of Claudine Gay?", YouTube ruled in my favor. Now, because I had a suspicion that a third copyright takedown notice was coming, I spent an afternoon writing up a full accounting of Mark's year-long cyberstalking, bullying, and harassment of me and my romantic partner, as well as documenting how I believe Tishka is misusing the copyright detection system, and sent it to YouTube's legal department. I also published it publicly on my personal newsletter. It's linked below. And I published a summary to Instagram and encouraged my followers to compel YouTube to act to not just protect my channel, but also to protect Black women creators largely because of Mark's documented pattern of abusing Black women using his YouTube channels. Unfortunately, I did not receive, immediate relief, despite my clear demonstration of the emotional distress that this situation has caused me, despite my claims that can be verifiable of the enormous emotional and financial toll Mark's digital terrorism has had on me over the past year. I felt like YouTube was dragging their feet, but I said, look, let's wait it out, follow the protocols, follow the rules. And so I reported some offensive content that YouTube had neglected for the past year to remove. I re-reported it after sending that email to YouTube's legal department and making it public. And I also reported a video that I believe misused 20 unedited minutes of my content. And when I received the notification that that video had been removed, I also saw that Mark's channel had been terminated. That was, in my estimation, long overdue. It is unconscionable that I essentially had to kick and scream and jump up and down and get thousands of people to read an open letter before YouTube enforced their own community guidelines. So what happens to people who don't have thousands of people who are willing to stick up for them? Cool. So, I do feel a temporary moment of relief because I'm glad that that channel came down. I'm frankly overjoyed that he will no longer be able to use that platform to monetize my harassment. But I'm not stupid. I know science tells us that cockroaches always come back. And so I expect Mark to attempt to rebrand and rebuild. But I'm telling y'all now that I am making it my mission to make sure that that does not happen. Mark's history, well documented, long history of mistreating Black women on YouTube is indefensible. And so I am making it my mission to make sure that he doesn't have any more future success. What did Iyanla say? Not on my watch. Right? I genuinely believe that publishing on YouTube is a privilege. And if you have an almost decade-long history of abusing that privilege, you should not be able to return. Okay, so that is that. As I mentioned before, I have basically become a copyright law intern since November. And during this process, I was inspired to create a new platform to share my knowledge and insight and analysis of content creation and digital media. It's going to be called, well, it is called Making Things is Hard. I'm going to add that as a section of my newsletter. If you are interested in getting for free the things I've spent thousands of dollars over the past couple of months to learn, please sign up down below. The link is in the description box. I think, because I just saw an interesting story today, I feel like I want my first post there to be about a case that's currently happening in LA District Court. It's a copyright case involving the tattoo artist Kat Von D. It's really interesting to me. And so I think I want to use Making Things is Hard to provide some expert analysis, talk to one of the many IP lawyers that I've become acquainted with. And shout out to y'all also for putting me on to the Do We Know Them podcast. They have experienced something really similar to me, but they're actually being sued. To my knowledge, I am not being sued yet. But again, as I said before, I hate to spend that $100K, but I don't fear it. You know, I don't fear it. All right, let's go to the chat. Okay, let's talk about it. The consequences for digital harassment doxing are way behind regarding laws and criminalization. Oh, don't I know it. Now, as I've said before, and as I will continue to say, I'm not a lock them up girl. But my experiences with the criminal legal system, both civil and criminal, regarding this kind of harassment have been incredibly demoralizing. Extremely expensive and extremely demoralizing. And unfortunately, because so many of the top lawmakers in the United States are honestly old people who don't really understand how the internet works, it's going to be a minute. It's going to be a minute before laws catch up to what's actually happened. This reminds me of, as Tishka was threatening to sue me, um, the correspondence between the attorneys, and the attorney was clearly, the opposing counsel was clearly referencing what, sorry, I have to make sure, I have to say, in my opinion, don't get fucked up out here. In my opinion, in that correspondence between the attorneys, it seemed like opposing counsel was referencing very obsolete statutes regarding the use of quote unquote copyrighted material. We're in 2024. There's lots of precedent around digital media, social media, and fair use. We can't do 90s precedent. That's not how it works. Oh my gosh, $50? This is so crazy. Congratulations for taking down that digital T. Keep your foot on his neck until you break it. Now this is where I have to say, I do not endorse violence, threats of violence, harassment, stalking, abuse. I do not endorse that. Don't do that. But, if you're speaking metaphorically, then I agree. Okay. Yeah. I could never stand a you hit me back type person. I feel you on this being too long coming, but I'm elated for you that you're making headway. I will say that the other reason why I decided to not only send the letter, but publish it is because I knew that in the recounting of this story, that Mark was going to frame the situation as if I was the aggressor. I felt like that was going to happen because I had seen him intimate that in posts on his channel. And that to me was shocking and horrifying. I had also experienced in the correspondence between the attorneys, Tishka's attorney outlining in some correspondence that she had no participation in this exchange because he and I just speak negatively about each other. That's not true. I had never heard of this man until I watched the video. Well, I want to be honest. I want to make sure that I'm remembering this correctly because I cannot be 100% for sure if the first thing I did was I saw him DM me on the For Harriet Instagram, or if the first thing I saw was the super long video of him and Tishka talking shit. Nasty, malignant, misogynistic, fat phobic, ironically, shit. Sexist shit. I can't remember, so I don't want to misspeak. But to be clear, I had never mentioned those people. Never. Ever. And then, even in my response, I never said their names. Never. Never posted an image, even in my response from March 2023. And then I left it alone. Mark didn't leave it alone though. And then he moved on to my romantic partner. So, any attempt to try to portray my harassment, my cyber stalking, the doxing of my romantic partner as mutual is categorically false. It is an attempt, in my opinion, to gain leverage in a situation in which both of those people look awful. Yes, you do, in my estimation, look fucking nuts. We have your back on any $100,000. Harassment to this degree must be met with a greater degree of positivity and community support for you and on principle. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate that enormously. I really do. And you know what? Something that I've been wanting to discuss. Years ago, I did this video called Black Women Deserve More Than Luxury. And it, was controversial. It was controversial because I'm controversial. Okay. And it was essentially about, I like a nice, an expensive bag. I like a fancy trip or whatever. But we do, as Black women, and especially if you're single and, I'm unmarried, need to be paying really close attention to how we manage our financial lives. And I have not always succeeded at that. Have not. But when I realized that I was going to need to pay thousands of dollars to retain the best, most experienced copyright attorney that I could find, I'm really glad that I wasn't spending up all my money. I'm really glad. At a time where Black girl luxury was at its height. Yeah, thankfully there's, more pushback to it now, but I'm telling you, I'm really glad that when I was experiencing incredible emotional strain and distress, that I didn't have to force myself to publish on YouTube because I needed the money. I'm really glad that I could only make stuff when I wanted to and not show up here and pretend like everything is okay because I needed to pay my rent. I'm really glad. And so now more than ever, as much as I did when I first made that video, I'm saying cute shit is great. It's nice. It's fun. I love to dress up. It's a great fucking time. But dude, when I had that first consultation with the attorney and he said, "Can you afford X?" And I know he was scared. I know he was nervous to ask me, "Can you afford?" ? And I said, "Yeah. Yeah, let's go." Okay. Um let's move on. The You are an important and fierce role model for Black women and girls. You go, sister. Yeah. And of course, I will underscore it is an incredible privilege, to even be able to afford an attorney. I understand that most people would acquiesce to a legal demand from a reputable law firm because they are afraid of going to court or don't have the ability to retain a lawyer, or like, I get it. That's 99% of people. It's not me though. It's not me. I'm really grateful that that's not me. Again, I'm not rich, girl. Don't push it. I got problems. What did Aaliyah say? You got issues, I got issues. Okay. But I can transfer a little bit of money. Okay. Let us go to the next part of this video. Okay, so before my For Harriet content creation was so rudely interrupted, I solicited voicemails from the paywall community and asked them to share their opinions about Claudine Gay and everything that's happened over the past couple of months. And the reason why I love this job and I love this community so much is because y'all have forced me in your explorations of this topic to kind of reassess my biases. And I have to be honest about how biased I am toward Claudine Gay as somebody who has interacted with her. And of course, the Harvard stuff. Like, I have to be honest about that. And in my initial assessments of everything that's happened, I probably did not have my most astute political lens. I probably obfuscated a little bit. And so let's go ahead and listen to what y'all have offered. Okay.
Thank you so much for letting your audience have the opportunity to leave voicemails. I'm entering my mid 20s. I turned 24 last week, and I definitely learned a lot about Black feminism and just feminism overall from you. I just want to thank you for all of the work you do, especially in the media space in regards to Black feminism and digital media. But I find Claudine Gay's resignation really interesting. I attended the Ivy that's an hour away from Harvard. And during my time at my institution, um, I started school in 2018. So that was around the time when Students for Justice in Palestine started on a lot of college campuses. And I was first exposed to how elite institutions invest in weapon companies that are used to slaughter Palestinians abroad. So I was exposed to the issue beforehand, and I first learned about Palestine in high school during a social studies class in high school. But I find Claudine Gay's resignation really interesting because I know people who currently attend Harvard Law School, and she has not done anything to protect Palestinian students on campus or law students on campus who protest against the the weapons that Harvard has invested in their endowment. And even at my own institution, I went to Brown because it's Providence, Rhode Island, and a Palestinian student was shot, and his name was Hisham. He was shot in Delaware, and there was a vigil that the president, Christina Paxson, held for students for him on campus. And then when students tried to protest the divestment, they were immediately shut down. And then a couple weeks later, students held a sit in on campus, and then she had them arrested and charged on campus. So I think the tension on college campuses are really tense now. But I think Claudine Gay's resignation is really interesting because in the hearing they were saying, "Oh, she supports Hamas, she's for anti-Semitism." But if you're actually a student existing in these spaces, you would know it's not true because these institutions are so tied to these companies that make these weapons that kill Palestinians. So they do whatever they can to to appease their donors. So I personally think that Claudine Gay's resignation was not like the way it was framed was not true. I feel like there was a lot of obfuscation of the truth because after October 7th, she sent an email saying like she stands with Israel and that she condemns the Hamas attack. So and there was actually a doxing truck at Harvard that had the different students who protested name on the truck, and she did nothing to protect those students. So I definitely think her resignation is I feel like it's really a right wing attack. And the reason I say it's a right wing attack is because all of a sudden they're bringing up these plagiarism accusations and saying she plagiarized her thesis and she only got there because of DEI. But the thing about it is, there's been an attack on DEI since like 2022. There's been such an aggressive attack on DEI, and it's basically dog whistle politics, code for racism, and that any black person in power basically is kind of under scrutiny and being told that they're only there because of DEI, because so many DEI initiatives were implemented after the George Floyd protests. So I definitely think her resignation or like the attacks from people who are right wing come from that, and they're kind of using this. I feel like they're basically using this as an opportunity to out her because they don't feel like she deserves her place as the first black president of Harvard and DEI. Because the thing about it is, Claudine Gay was appointed in the summer. If they wanted to bring up the fact that she plagiarized her thesis, they could have brought it up then. And I'm pretty sure I read an article that Harvard did an investigation, and they said,
Okay, we're gonna stop it here. You know what I love about people who don't speak for a living? And this is the reason why I want to give people more opportunities to get their shit off. Because when people get the opportunity to get their shit off, they freaking go. Okay. And y'all are so smart and thoughtful, and you can just speak for 10 minutes. But I want to cut in here with a little bit to add some more context. So, as this caller is saying, since the end of 2022, there has been a concerted effort from Republicans to dismantle DEI initiatives across the country. I believe I read today that more than 40 anti DEI bills have been introduced across the country. If you are interested in learning more about the machinations of the right wing operatives who are deeply invested in this work, I read today a great article from the New York Times, an investigative piece. It's pretty long, but it's thorough, about the Claremont Institute, which is a right wing think tank, and the Manhattan Institute. And it was pretty appalling. Their stated desires, of course, the New York Times, the reporting was able to uncover all of these emails, but the naked bigotry. And something that since I'm talking about this now, want to underscore, there's a foundational feminist idea, Black feminist idea, that all oppressions are linked. Okay. That's, what would Patricia Hill Collins call it? The matrix of domination, right? Like that you are able to be oppressed or experience marginalization just like based on wherever you're situated within the matrix, or the whole point of intersectionality is that your oppression, your vulnerability is situational, it is contextual. So In one instance, you might be good. In another situation, you might not be good. In one situation, you might have power. In another situation, you might be getting stomped into the ground because power relations are dynamic, they're not static. And something that was really interesting to me in reading that long article was how expressly linked hatred of Black people and gay people was in those email communications. I, as somebody who honestly knew homophobia was wrong since I was watching Ellen, you know what I mean? Like when I was like 9, like I was just like, I don't get it. Like, what's the issue? When was Ellen? I was maybe 8, right? And I just knew, like, this don't make no sense, right? The first Ellen show, not the talk show, okay? Um, I am still so befuddled by how deep homophobia runs in people. The exchanges between those right-wing activists, academics, public intellectuals, the degree of homophobia that they were using the F slur, like these are educated people. And not only are these educated people in those exchanges, these educated white people were making fun of the backwards hillbilly, quote unquote, bubbas. Their bigotry was cosmopolitan. But right alongside their clear disgust and disdain toward gay people is Black people. Their clear racism. Bias is not even a strong enough word. It's flat out hate, you know? And if I am remembering correctly, I want to make sure I don't misquote them. But there was one email I read there where they were outlining what their targets for legislation were going to be over the next couple of years. And somebody said at the top is Blacks and gays are right under Blacks. Like straight out said it. And obviously, as a person who knows that there are many Black gay people, right? Okay. Like there's many like gay people of color, like many Black gay people, like they exist, but like in the right wing bigoted mind, they're just two completely separate groups or whatever. Um, I'm saying all this to say that you think that you can ignore a group being targeted and you're going to be okay because it's not you. You're not a member of that group or you hold bias against that group. That is not actually how structural inequality and oppression works. They're literally saying in the organizing emails, it's this group and then this group. So nobody who has any kind of marginalized identity can afford to turn a blind eye. Ooh, I have to go back and link this article because it's at the top of my mind because I'm like, oh, this is real interesting. There was one passage where a woman who I believe works at the Manhattan Institute, super conservative think tank, was talking so much shit about Peter Thiel and his husband. And Peter Thiel is a well-known supporter of very conservative causes. But Thiel has decided that whatever his, ideologies are, it's worth linking up with people who find him to be disgusting, who find his marriage to be an abomination. The people, I mean, literally, it was about somebody that woman knew going to a Peter Thiel, like a cocktail party or something, and lapping it up with Thiel, and then coming to talk to her about it, and her talking, to all of these crazy right wing bigots about how disgusting, immoral, perverted he is. Like, it's pretty fucking nuts. That's why solidarity is so important, but they keep fighting against each other, trying to tap dance for those cookies. These folks hate us all, but will use us to take each other down. As I mentioned previously, I do feel the same way about Jewish Zionists who choose to partner politically, even if they believe it's temporary, with right wing Republicans who are, in every other instance, openly, aggressively anti Semitic. You know? And, as a Black person, I always have to say that Black people linking up to oppose the gender ideology, or the spread of the gay agenda or what, I'm like, y'all, these people are not here to help you. They're not here to help us. They don't care about our interests. Anyways, um, what else? Ooh, what did she also hit on? Ooh, okay. The other thing is learning more about Claudine Gay. So I looked up the students who faced disciplinary action for attending protests at Harvard. There were a number of students who were sent in front of the ad board, which is basically, the disciplinary committee. And because they had participated in these pro Palestine actions, but the charges brought against them were not, you participated in pro Palestine actions, so you were going to face consequences. They were brought in front of the administrative board for disrupting daily duties, right? Like, in their protests, in their demonstration, because they had prevented university personnel from being able to fulfill their jobs, that was actionable. And they were acted upon, right? So again, the idea that Harvard University administration was or is working to insulate pro-Palestinian students, it's just it does not, it doesn't align. Okay. Keep going.
Themselves, they did not find um, plagiarism in her thesis. And it was funny because on Twitter, when they were talking about her thesis, I read it and I was like, this looks like an in-text citation. This is something I use in my own studies for my own papers and classes. So I feel like they're kind of using the plagiarism point to just out her, because if you're an academic, you would know what an in-text citation is. And she used in-text citations. I don't think she plagiarized because, as I said before, I use the same thing. So I definitely think the Zionist lobby is strong, and like they're coalescing with right wingers to basically achieve their goals. And I feel like they're basically using this opportunity to label anything anti-Semitic so that they can get their anti-DEI goals achieved. Because like if you're a student in these spaces, these presidents are not, the Harvard is not, or Brown, or any elite institution is not a place where Marxism thrives. Like they suppress Palestinian voices or people who support Palestine on campus even before the October 7th attack. So I definitely think it's coming from a different place, and right wingers are using this opportunity, this special opportunity to oust anyone they can under the guise of anti Semitism, even though it's not anti Semitic. Because even, like, I know that Jewish billionaire Bill Ackerman, he wanted MIT, UPenn, and Harvard presidents to resign, but he only went after Claudine Gay's saying that she plagiarized. She mentioned
Okay, so I will underscore here that Bill Ackman outlined his desire to force all three of the presidents who the presidents who testified in front of Congress to resign. He realized that this was the most opportune way, the easiest path to get Claudine Gay to resign. And so he jumped on this path. But even after he jumped on this path with Claudine Gay, he still expressly stated his desire to force the president of MIT out as well. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because she's Jewish, Sally Kornbluth. But this was easy for sure. And with the anti DEI wave that had already been rising, the tide was already shifting. Yeah. Incompetent, liar, cheater. Yeah. Sometimes racism is just the shortest distance between 2 points. Yeah. The other thing about, colleges not being a bastion of Marxism, I think that that's really interesting. I was already liberal leaning before I went to college. I grew up in Texas and Oklahoma and had so many serious ideological arguments with students and sometimes with teachers. Okay. About my, at that point, liberal ideologies. Harvard did not make me left leaning. It did offer me theoretical, historical, sociological context for the things that I already believed. And when you're sitting in classes, even when you are taught by people who are liberal, right? Left leaning, but not Marxist at all, right? Like center left at most, but generally center right, your little developing post-adolescent brain is like, look, something's not adding up here. And so for me, the real ideological leftward transformation happened by discussing these ideas with students, undergraduate students and graduate students. It was not the faculty. I don't even want to say any names because I don't want the names of the professors that I really like to be mixed up in this shit. But the professors that I, adore and like and were so supportive they're not, no. Not even sniffing marks. No. Okay, let's finish it.
he didn't try to investigate the president of MIT or UPenn, even though he wanted them ousted as well. So I definitely think there's some racial motivations behind behind them wanting to out Claudine Gay. And I don't blame Claudine Gay for wanting to resign because, like, even though before she resigned, they said that she had the support of Harvard. They were the Zionist lobby and the right wingers were really, really, really adamant on having her resign and continually attacking her and digging up stuff from her past. So I think she made the right choice by resigning, but I think to me it says that these spaces or these structures, like no matter how much like work is trying to be done to like make them more inclusive, I truly don't ever think that they will ever be inclusive spaces. And that I guess when I say we, I'm referring to Black women, that we shouldn't be so insistent on trying to fit into these spaces because they already think we don't deserve to be there. No
be honest with you. Harvard is not designed to be inclusive. And I feel really confident in saying that any Black woman who decides to attend Harvard or teach at Harvard or be an administrator at Harvard understands that it's not designed to be inclusive. That is not to say that the Black women who choose to attend or teach or work there deserve the racial animus that they experience, the malice that they experience. It is to say that the mission is not a secret. And we do have to be honest about understanding that the mission is not a secret.
No matter how much work we do or how many credentials we have, because of the fabrics of how racism was implemented into society and how it still shows up, that we're probably never going to be seen as good enough in the eyes of white people. And I think that it's really like, of course, we should be ambitious and achieve our goals, but I don't really see the point in trying to appease white people. Or I guess I don't see the point because, like, the system is so racist that they're going to say, like, we don't deserve to be there or we don't have the credentials to be there.
Okay, that was that. So why did Kim go to Harvard? Because I'm fiercely competitive and I wanted to be around fiercely competitive people. And even when I was 17 years old, I understood the power of a brand. And that is the real answer. I understood the power of the name. And I am honestly one of the best, the smartest, I will say, one of the smartest decisions 17-year-old Kimberly could have made. A very strategic decision that paid off. That's not to justify, any of the shit that happens. I'm just being honest about my teenage thought process. Okay. I understand, as I mentioned before, people get excited to have the opportunity to talk their stuff. So I'm not annoyed when people might go on. I appreciate anybody for sharing their thoughts. Let's go to the next one. Is it coming?
Hey y'all. Oh gosh. I mean, there's what what is there not, to say about this situation with Claudine Gay um at Harvard. And it's embarrassing. And not because she's getting the push out really, but because, as a Haitian woman, she really should know better than to join in and become partner to the violence perpetuated by institutions like these ivory tower universities. Our Haitian folks are descendants of people whom resisted, who fought, very literally and like not theoretically by any means for liberation, for freedom and freedom. And all in all, like resistance is the Palestinian cause, and Haitian folks, our cause was also resistance and liberation, and we're still paying the price for that today. Whether that be from France or from the U.S. or just from the world in general. So I think we have to stop and think, what does it mean for a Black Haitian woman to amass this much wealth and status at the number one university in the world and not say Free Palestine? And what does it mean to be like at the center of knowledge um, quote unquote, at the center of knowledge if she harms Palestinians. Now, at the same time, what actual education are we getting at these universities? Because how do you be the head of that and decide that liberation is not a part of that education? And at the same time, she wouldn't be the first person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, really easily. Yeah, but I'm actually really, again, appreciative of people for bringing this up. The irony of a woman of Haitian descent using her institutional power to prop up a settler colonial state, allegedly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a real thing. I have to be careful until those strikes get removed. Okay. You gotta be careful. We gotta be careful. We're skating on thin ice over here. Okay. For sure. Look, um, anybody who decides to become head of the university, who decides to become head of the institution, understands that the institution's primary interests are sustaining the institution. Harvard education and administration and the board of overseers and the Harvard Corporation are not invested in liberation. There's not money in that. So it's useful to pose these questions, but fundamentally, these institutions are trying to stay alive by any means necessary. And they will utilize whoever, whatever to do it.
To be silent, obviously. And these institutions definitely mirror the same views she does, regardless if she was a poster child for it. So there's that. But, something I'm learning is that being a person of color, being black, being marginalized, or being, marginalized in the world, it doesn't ensure that you actually give a crap about liberation. And, you know, it doesn't give us the monopoly on how to understand interconnected liberation, because we also don't really hold single identities either. Like, a lot of black folks are also American.
Yeah, for sure. Identity is not ideology. And just to reiterate, you can be oppressed, you can be marginalized, and be an oppressor. Most of us are.
And that impacts how we actually care for or care about in general for the cause of liberation. Because a lot of us actually don't care and just want our turn. And I think about that a lot with this because that's basically what her situation is. And, in fact, we might be more privy to learn how to use these tools of empire for capitalistic self benefit. And that's exactly what Claudine Gay's done.
True. I also want to underscore that when I say that everybody who decides to attend, teach, or work at Harvard understands the mission, that is not to say that they are choosing to engage with the institution maliciously or for nefarious reasons, or that they know that they are participating in something that has the potential to be harmful. I don't think I don't believe that. I think generally, like, there's no incentive to even consider if you have access to so much power and privilege. There's no reason to even think about how the thing that you love and are deeply connected with and that has given you so much, how that could create harm. Generally, you don't even start to think about it until you're harmed. You don't even start to think about the layers, okay, of fucked up shit until somebody's boot is on your neck. What do they call that? The nigga wake up call or whatever? For sure. And I am not exempt. I can talk about it because she is me. I am her. Obviously, I'm not Claudine Gay. I do not have a $900,000 salary from the oldest private university in the United States. I don't.
And it's really a shame. It's embarrassing for someone like her who's going to be keeping her 900K salary to never say free Palestine unequivocally. But, if not just for her salary, she'll continue to rake in on the backs of all the Palestinian black and brown lives she's harmed in her short time, as she said herself, being president at Harvard. It's also her silence that is proof that when we enter these institutions, as my chosen auntie, Dr. Seti Desi Book Auntie on Instagram often says, you know, when we enter these colonial institutions, no matter how they try to brand themselves as progressive or forward thinking, that we're actually more likely to get changed by them than to change these institutions. And, I think that's simply because of the forces that be and how we get co-opted into capitalism. And, well, it's a pretty attractive thing to get co-opted into because we think of our individual gain, which is actually just individual self-harm under the guise of, climbing the status ladder. And I think this push out that she's going through is proof of that. And even the racist comments she's facing on her way out is like further proof. And yeah, even as she's an active harm doer to Palestinians, it's like it's that duality, that both and yeah, I don't know if she'll ever really see that, which is sad because I'm like, aren't you supposed to be smart? You know, but the proof is really that if we don't know what we're supposed to be doing, we don't know what integrity is, we don't know what liberation should look like. If we don't care about it, we'll just get cooked in the sauce of capitalism. And a lot of people are just making money, with their identity. Like, hey, I'm black, I care because I was like, stop lying. And a lot of people out here are fully capping. So we'll start thinking we did the best we could when actually all we did was hurt people and endanger our own collective liberation. Yeah, that's what I think about when I think about Claudine Gay. And she'll be continue to be making a lot of money, and that's a violence in itself. So, all right, thanks for listening. Bye.
Yeah, I genuinely don't think people are capping. I genuinely don't. Um 9 times out of 10, I don't think people are lying when they state a commitment to doing good. Even if you believe them to be an active harm doer. And I'm not even debating the assertion that Claudine Gay harmed Palestinian people during her tenure. I'm not debating that. But I'm saying that I don't know, capping lying assumes like an intentionality that I don't think is there. There is maybe a gap in political education, whether that be willful or inadvertent. Because, you know, I think a lot of people genuinely believe. I mean, when Tyler Perry, I talk so much shit about Tyler Perry. Okay, but when Tyler Perry tells us that he has to allegedly exploit workers in Atlanta in order to amass all of this wealth so that he can have all of this money to help people, do I think that he's lying? No, I think he really believes that because of how we have, because of the way that trying to survive in capitalism blunts our ability to imagine different. I think he believes that. In the same way, I genuinely believe, as somebody who sat in class with Claudine Gay, it was a tough time, I'll be honest with you. I was going through it. Um, that the desires, the aims, the goals are not, that her idea of justice is the goal. Like that is what she felt like she was working toward. But there is something about how, as tepid, milquetoast, lukewarm as those stated objectives were, they were still a threat. You cannot water down, quote unquote, the pursuit of justice, the pursuit of equity enough to appease people who hate Black people. Like, you can't, like, it's not, you can't deracinate it enough. Anything that you do is gonna be aggressive. So, the other thing that this makes me think about is, if we understand that this is the landscape that we are navigating in, and Black women in academia, in corporate America, in countless other institutions see that this is the landscape that we have to live and work in. And I'm saying we, even though I probably have more autonomy personally and professionally than most people, but I still gotta go to the doctor and stuff. I'm about to get surgery. I'm gonna have to navigate the surgery system and stuff, right? What is the incentive to, like, deeply invest? What is the incentive to, like, give yourself over to that? I mean, it's gotta be, at the end of the day, it's gonna be money, the illusion of safety, power, social standing, status, and sometimes a genuine belief that you can change things. Like a genuine belief that reform is possible. Probably not transformation, but maybe reform. So I'm definitely interested in what the next couple of decades of institutional life are going to be like for Black women in the United States, because we're definitely witnessing a sea change. I'm definitely seeing people say that things that they once looked at as aspirational are not that, because things that you deem aspirational, eventually they just put you up on a pedestal that people are eager to knock you off of. And like they're eager to knock you off of that pedestal in the most violent way, in the most humiliating way. That's another thing that I do find honestly sad, because I can have empathy for anybody, literally. Um, it wasn't just enough to remove Claudine Gay from this thing that she had worked really hard for and invested her entire adult life into pursuing. They also had to humiliate the fuck out of her. Okay. Do we want to take a little bit of a comment break? Because the comments are commenting. Okay. A similar thing with the Taylor Swift, Greta Gerwig, Barbie era feminism permeating our culture right now. To come to terms with the contradictory natures of capitalism and feminism would be devastating for the girls. Oh my gosh, there is a lot to say about Barbie. There's a lot to say about Barbie, and I've been meaning to say it. I was just distracted last year, but there's a lot about I think there's a good I don't personally feel any type of way about Barbie because, you know, if if Barbie is 6th grade, you know, I'm in like freaking double PhD, right? Like Barbie is not for me. It's not for me, okay? But there's definitely an argument to make about Barbie being like actively harmful. Even if I don't believe that, I could see an argument for it. I mean, I could see it. I could. I could. I don't know if I would argue that, but somebody else could. Okay. It's like when people see us fighting against racism, it is taken as a fight against America, white supremacy. You can never make certain things palatable enough to be acceptable, for sure. For sure. And so, and by the way, that article on DEI, I cannot remember the name, but it is on the New York Times. I don't know, put Claremont Institute, DEI, New York Times in your Google. But and I also have read a couple of interviews with Christopher Rufo, the architect, the public-facing architect of these of the anti-CRT initiative and these anti-DEI messaging and talking points. And as he stated in his Wall Street Journal op-ed, right? He believes that this is a fight against hegemony, right? Like he believes that this is a fight against the soul and values and freedom of America. That, which is interesting because they're always talking about diversity of opinion, diversity of thought or whatever. But the anti-DEI work is effectively to consolidate these institutions into having a singular viewpoint, a singular kind of opinion, but whatever. That America is a meritocracy. That's the argument. The argument is that the soul and spirit of America is fundamentally rooted in notions of meritocracy. You work hard and you get what you work for. You work hard and you get what you deserve, despite, all of the evidence to the contrary of that. And that any effort to level the playing field or increase opportunity or to create spaces where people who experience historically and honestly contemporarily marginalized identities are not always put upon. They're not always besieged by hatred that is anti-American. What's funny to me is like if you really, really dig into the arguments that they're making, they're fundamentally acknowledging that America is rooted in the exploitation and marginalization and objectification of people who are not white, straight people. I mean, literally, what was the law professor? Her name is Amy Wax. She is a law professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and she was experiencing consequences for saying in class that Black people are jealous of Europeans because we don't have a forward thinking progressive culture that builds things. That we're jealous. Just envy. It's, yeah, a thing for sure. Ooh, the last thing I wanted to say on this is the voicemail number 2, that caller, when she talked about people who occupy the highest, most quote unquote elite rungs of society, the most power, who have the most money, the way that they use their identities to shield themselves from criticism, that makes me think of a great book that really called me the fuck out called Elite Capture. I cannot pronounce the author's name, so I won't try. But it's basically about how identity politics are often weaponized by the people who need the least protection. It's good. It's good. Okay, let's do one more and then wrap this up. And if you want to listen to the rest of them, they're up on the Patreon right now.
This is insane. I mean, it's insanely infuriating because for two reasons. One, the incredible amount of human capital, actual capital, that goes into Claudine Gay even being in the position, an investment the institution itself had to make through that vetting process. And to have them throw that away just because they got cold feet because somebody, pulled basically the right wing playbook on them is insane to me. And it speaks to the deep ingrained racism and misogyny of society and its institutions to consider someone um, to have no value to that extent that you could sacrifice them, because you're a coward. The other reason is that, Chris Rufo, the minion behind the anti.
Ooh, stopping right here. I wrote down when I first listened to this, the mission, not me talking about this like Harvard is a cabal. But the mission of the university is not to be brave, like it's not. Like I know that the tagline is Veritas, which means truth in Latin, but like not really. Like bravery and courage are not lucrative. So those should not be expectations for multi-billion-dollar institutions. Yeah. There's no commitment to supporting faculty. There is no commitment to supporting students. There's not even really a commitment to supporting academic freedom. Okay? Like the commitment is to protect the institution from internal or external collapse. And by the way, I'm saying all this shit. I'm still going to my next reunion. like, like, yeah, these are I'm don't get, the critiques are real, but like I'm gonna be there
ICRT ban.
talking shit with the other freaking way more leftist people that I met in college. I'm freaking milquetoast liberal compared to some people that I know from college.
And behind these, like, witch hunts for academic presidents, or as he said, like, the most powerful academic in the world, is what he describes her as. And what he forgot to say, he meant like the most powerful black academic in the world. But he got an interview, I think, on Politico, where he explains exactly how he and his minion friends put this under motion, and how similar it is to how he created the anti-CRT hysteria. And so this is really hard to combat by individuals, right? Like folks like us, or people who have jobs, or even people in the DEI world. It's very hard to combat this force, this concerted effort from the right wing. But the people who can combat this and would have an easy time putting their foot down are legacy institutions like the New York Times, who is not doing it, and these universities who are not doing it.
Okay. Yes. So, voicemail number 3, caller number 3 inspired me to go look up that interview with Christopher Rufo in Political. It's really short. Politico. It's really short. It's an easy read, but he reiterates again and again that this is the strategy. We have to stick to it, and it's always going to win. So, if I remember correctly, he said that the way to crumble these institutions, to topple them, you have to use a financial strategy, attack the financiers, convert the donors. You have to use a political strategy, which is what we saw with that congressional hearing. And what was the other thing he said? It was political, financial, and I have to look it up. I'm so sorry. Christopher Rufo, Politico. How a conservative activist crusade ousted Claudine Gay. Okay, I have to look it up. Political narrative. I knew it. My mind was saying messaging, but he says narrative. So the 3 prongs of attacking the most powerful institutions in the United States, according to right-wing activist Christopher Rufo: narrative, financial, political. And the way that you are able to change and shape the narrative is by shaming and bullying the media institutions that are seen to represent the moderate left viewpoint. And what happens is the New York Times, which for some reason people still think is like so progressive and liberal, and like the Washington Post, for example, because they have said that their goal is to align with truth, that makes them really susceptible to bad actors who seem to have their ducks in a row. If you say, right, Fox News and the right-wing people, they don't say that their goal, the intention, the mission is to tell the truth. No. Their goal and mission, clearly stated, is to further the agenda. So there's no need to get off of the talking points or the narrative or the accepted story if your primary goal, first and foremost, is to further the agenda. So much so that they open themselves out to multi-billion-dollar lawsuits, which was the case with Dominion, right? The voting systems. Instead of acknowledging the truth about the last election, they were like, oh no, we're just going to be sued for billions of dollars because the narrative, the story is the most important thing. When a publication, an institution like the New York Times or even NPR, because they've fallen into this trap, when they say, we're just trying to tell the truth, no matter who it comes from, you are so vulnerable to people who know how to manipulate coming in and getting you on their program. You create all of this space for nefarious actors, people who have a clear agenda. Christopher Rufo has stated everywhere he can, I'm putting this out. I'm not hiding it. I'm telling y'all what the playbook is because I know y'all can't combat it. And he's right. If you say that you're committed to truth and objectivity at all times, no matter what, you're gonna inevitably put out shit that is dubious at best. You're gonna let arguments float that are real sketchy because you want to be seen as fair. We want to give everybody a fair shot to tell their side of the story. Well, honestly, everybody don't deserve a fair shot. And I understand that in the Rufo ideology of it all, that is anti-American. But the progressive ideology is that everybody does not deserve a fair shot because everybody is not equally vulnerable. The progressive ideology is, while the right-wing conservatives who are architecting these policies and sniggling and giggling in emails back and forth for years about how disgusting gay people are and how stupid Black people are, that the risks and rewards for the reversals of DEI or the success of DEI are not the same for all of the actors in the equation. Man, this reminds me of a conversation that I had yesterday, because it's not just about sexual identity and race, right? Even with class, this happens. The reason why I don't, and I will not in the future, be having real debates about if poor people who make quote unquote bad decisions deserve to be punished or whatever, is because it makes people feel good to get their shit off about poor people. It makes people feel good to get their shit off about how lazy and intellectually inept Black people are. It makes people feel good to get their shit off about how quote unquote crazy trans people are or whatever. But in real life, letting those arguments fly, legitimizing them with debate, giving them space in the paper of record, it animates, and I know people think that we abuse this term, it animates violence toward them. Like in real life. So with the class thing, with the poverty thing, was it Alabama or Mississippi? Where's Tate Reeves governor? Where he rejected federal funds to expand free lunch or something like that because of these ideologies about what poor people should and should not get. I have lived for my entire life except for 4 years in Oklahoma or Texas. And the refusal to expand Medicaid and Medicare has been a huge, contentious political topic. And while these politicians are debating if people who make under a certain amount of money deserve these quote unquote entitlements, people are actually dying. So, for something that is a high minded debate, for one side of the equation is you're dying because you can't get cancer treatment. For people on the other side of the equation, both sides of the equation are not equal, and we should not treat them as if they're equal. You think you're being fair and balanced when in reality you're being deeply disingenuous. Anyways,
So these are like institutions that benefit from a huge amount of clout, cultural capital, social capital, actual capital, who are, behemoths, really. Like,
I will say, will suppressing or not acknowledging bad actors really make their rhetoric less harmful? Or isn't it just easier to ignore? Just because we aren't interacting with it doesn't mean it's not there. Not interacting with it, interacting with it legitimizes it. It's like, let me just tell you, I believe deeply that I believe, this is my opinion, that uh somebody told me don't the digital terrorist, we're gonna call him uh TDT, okay? That TDT was initially outraged because I rejected to an offer to appear on his platform, and after he started making videos, I refused to acknowledge them like they were serious because they're not serious. They're not worthy of the time, the energy, the effort, the brain power, the social capital, the potential for they're just not. And ignoring them does not mean that they go away. No. Eliminating that stuff takes a different kind of activation. It takes really intentional organizing. But refusing them to ever be viewed as deserving of equal space, equal thoughts, the same playing field, the same kind of visibility, does contribute to their marginalization. There's always going to be bigots. There's always going to be bigots. There's always going to be misogynists. There's always going to be transphobes. There's always going to be homophobes. But in a world in which so much of our access and opportunity hinges on the social capital that accompanies being validated by people who are esteemed, institutions that have money, have power, have influence, denying views that we believe should be marginal, that capital is essential. Okay. Not me like just really hanging out in like the little square. When an institution like the New York Times or a little baby institution like for Harriet, if I were to seriously bring on violent misogynists and talk to them like the shit is normal, what do they gain and what do I lose? What do they gain and what do the people who have to engage with the violent ideologies, with the bigoted, oppressive ideologies, what do they lose? The only people who gain anything in these interactions, in these debates, in these platformings are the people whose ideologies are necessarily marginalized. They get to be like Chris Rufo and brag about how they weaseled their way in. They broke the code. So they get to brag about how they're so smart and strategic and they kicked down the door that the weak liberals were trying to hold closed. But what does everybody else get? What does the institution get? What do the people get? What do the people who actually experience that marginality, what do they get? Nothing. What actually ends up happening is conversations become more difficult, conversations become more muddled. Because you have all of this new shit that maybe kind of sounds right, maybe kind of sounds legitimate, is introduced into these conversations, and then it's mainstreamed, and then all of a sudden it becomes what we deem common knowledge. Dude, one thing that those freaking right-wing Republicans are good at is sneaking their terminology, sneaking their phrasings into mainstream popular discourse. They're really freaking good at that. Because the quote unquote left wing institutions don't put up a fight. Every conversation is framed on their terms. I mean, the easiest example of this is wokeism. Anyways, maybe I think that shaming and marginalizing, look, I can't talk about that. I can't get off script and talk about that. But look, my boyfriend tweeted a couple weeks ago about how there's a reason why so many people associated with that manosphere shit don't use their real names. There's a reason why they there's like a weird thing, right? There's a reason why people who are deeply invested in those hyper sexist, misogynistic communities, the men and the women, use pseudonyms. Because there are consequences to aligning yourself with that. Consequences are good. Keep that shit in the motherfucking dark. Demonizing our words. Yeah, ignoring it won't make it go away, but it does make people think more about if they want to be involved with things that aren't seen as acceptable for sure. And look, we have to acknowledge, oh, I'm just on here talking. This is like my new thing. I'm just on here talking. We have to acknowledge that because the right wingers are just willing to do whatever, that in some ways they have an advantage here, you know? Um it's certainly interesting to me that the diversity of opinion people, the academic freedom people are the people championing kicking kids out of school for supporting Palestine. I mean, that's interesting. Nobody really believes in absolute freedom. Nobody's really anti-censorship. Nobody's really anti-cancel culture. Ultimately, it's a battle of who can organize the best and raise the most money. And yeah, I do think in many ways the left is at this point and moving forward going to be real disadvantaged there. I would like to think about and explore ways to counter that, like really sit with people and think through it. But from what I'm seeing, I got to be honest, I do think the right has a lot of structural advantages in progressing their agenda politically and institutionally at this moment in time. That's because they project and use Darvo. They want freedom of thought as a means of making everyone think as they do. True, they're willing to do whatever, no matter the consequences. If you move with any type of ethic, then you can't go as low as they go. White leftists do, yeah, because most of them are really liberal, and we know what MLK said about that. Many people on the left still have the when they go low, we go high mentality. But can I be honest? I think that the when they go low, we go high mentality is about, it's like the politics of respectability, like the way that Evelyn Higginbotham initially theorized it. The politics of respectability was about Black church women uplifting their minds, behaving a certain way, and then it uplifts your spirit, right? It uplifts how you think of yourself, how you see yourself. And when they go low, we go high is actually, wait a second, there is a direct link between Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham's theory of politics of respectability, not the way that it's colloquially used, and when they go low, we go high. There's a straight line between that. But anyways, it's that it makes you feel good to have kept it above board, but also, and I can tell you from personal experience, maybe, allegedly, trying to go as low as people who have no ethics and morals, it's a race to the bottom that they will always win. Like, because when you're racing to see who can go lowest, you're always susceptible to, as somebody said in the chat, them reversing it on you and doing Darvo, which is reverse the victim and offender role. And when you're in the mud, when y'all are both in the mud, it is hard for people who are just being introduced to the situation to determine who is the aggressor, and who is the victim. And that makes you vulnerable. I want to say something else, but I can't. Just in case this video gets used in litigation. um yeah, a lot of the left has lost my respect a lot. Yeah. College administrations will pretend to care about how students feel about a new administrative candidate, but ultimately choose what suits their own financial interests, even if the noob is a bully. I will say this, right? Like, yeah, it's about financial interest, it's about imaging, it's about branding, which are, connected to financial interests. But, elitism is not, you can't disentangle elitism from money, but there, okay, there is a part of social capital that you can't buy. And so the positioning of these institutions is also about that stuff, right? Like, you ask the question, why is Donald Trump whinging about not getting into Columbia or Harvard or whatever at his big age? You are allegedly worth so much money. Why do you care about being rejected by these institutions? It's because there's like a next level that just writing a check, it does not allow you entree. I'm getting tired. I've been doing this for a long time. Okay. Well, how shall we end? Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm just, getting my sea legs back. Just hanging out, having a good time, reconnecting. I definitely have some more scripted content that I want to get out, but right now, as I mentioned, my YouTube channel is in some peril. We got to get past this little tricky part right now. But I have so many ideas for Harriet on YouTube and in real life. I'm excited to be able to move forward on those. Buy Girl Scout cookies from my nieces if you like Black girls. If you hate Black girls, then don't. Only the people who like Black girls buy Girl Scout cookies from my nieces. The link is in the description box below. My most recent videos, newsletter posts, all of that is also in the description box below. I will link this in the description below. Join the Patreon. Buy some merch. I've talked my lip gloss off. It's been a good night. I will see you guys later. Bye.